מבקש קצת להוריד את הקול. נעמי, בבקשה לשבת ולהירגע.
רבותיי, בבקשה שקט. בבקשה שקט.
חברים, בוקר טוב לכולם, צהריים טובים. אני שמח לראות כאן את כל הקהל הגדול. אנחנו שמענו מקומות לפי כמות הנרשמים, אבל מה שקרה שבאו יותר ממה שנרשמו. זה אומר שהמפגש הזה הוא כן אטרקטיבי. אז תודה רבה לכם שבאתם. הפורום הזה זה פורום של ועד מנהל של בני ברית, יחד עם כל הנשיאים. אנחנו קוראים לזה, מנחם, התחלתי כבר. אנחנו קוראים לזה מועצת בני ברית. אתם יודעים שהייתה לנו תקופה מאוד קשה מאז השביעי לאוקטובר. אנחנו נמצאים במצב מלחמה, יש לנו חטופים, יש הרוגים, יש פצועים וכן הלאה, יש מפונים מהבתים. מאז, ויש יתומים, ומאז שפרצה המלחמה אנחנו כארגון כיוונו והתמקדנו בסיוע למלחמה, גם לחיילים וגם למפונים, לעוטף עזה ואחר כך מהצפון. התקופה הזו אינה מתקופה קשה, אבל היא נתנה לנו את ההזדמנות. יורם, תטפל בה.
אי אפשר לסגור את הדלת.
טוב, חבר'ה, זה לא מבשיח, תהיו קשובים. התקופה הזו של המלחמה נתנה לנו הזדמנות גדולה לחזק את הקשר בינינו לבין בני ברית העולמי. ומה זה התבטא? התבטא שהגיעה משלחת מחול של אנשי בני ברית. אנחנו גייסנו תרומות באמצעותם שאנחנו השתמשנו בהם כדי לעזור לחיילים ולעזור למפונים מהיישובים שבעוטף עזה ובצפון. אני פשוט ניצלנו את ההזדמנות שהמנכ"ל של בני ברית העולמי, מר דן מרישין, וולקאם, וולקאם, ניצלנו את ההזדמנות שהוא הגיע לוועידת הנשיאים, והזמנו אותו להיפגש עם כל הפורום הרחב הזה. אילן שחורי תכף יציג את דן מרישין לכם. האורח מיועד לספר לנו על בני ברית העולמי ואיך הוא פועל. תהיה לכם אפשרות לשאול אותו שאלות, כמובן הוא ידבר באנגלית. אחרי זה אנחנו נעשה הפסקה, אני אעשה סיכום קצר של המפגש הזה. נעשה איזה הפסקה לצורך צילום משותף. יש פה צלם שכנראה יסדר איך 80 איש מסתדרים בצילום משותף. יהיה לנו צילום משותף יחד עם דן מרישין ואלן שניידר, ולאחר מכן אנחנו נעשה ישיבת מועצה ארצית של בני ברית. מכיוון שזה כבר פורום שהתכנס פה גם ועד מנהל וגם נשיאים, אנחנו נעשה את ההזדמנות ונעשה ישיבת מועצה. יש לנו כמה נושאים שאנחנו רוצים להעביר לכם, זה הופיע בסדר היום שאתם קיבלתם. אני רוצה להודות לאילן שחורי ולמורן המגדי בסקירה שלנו על ארגון האירוע הזה, ואני מאחל לכולנו שיהיה לנו מפגש מעניין ומהנה. תודה רבה. אילן, בבקשה.
All right. So, good morning to all of you. First, a few words in English in honor of our designation guest, and then a few short words in Hebrew. Today, for the first time in the history of Nebrit, we are hosting the CEO of the organization with all the launch president in the country. I am very happy that this meeting is being held in Israel for the first time and with such a large number of presidents. בשנתיים האחרונות מגבירה בני ברית את הפעילות הבינלאומית שלה והקשרים עם חברי ארגון מעבר לים, וכחלק ממדיניות חדשה זו אנחנו נפגשים ומארחים גם את בכירי הארגון בעולם. בדצמבר האחרון הגיע לארץ משלחת סולידריות של ראשי בני ברית הבינלאומיים מארצות הברית, דרום אמריקה, אירופה ועוד. לצערנו לא היה לחברי המשלחת בראשות דן מרישין זמן לפגוש את חברי הארגון, למעט פגישה מצומצמת עם נשיא בני ברית. אז ביקשתי ממנו שבביקור הקרוב שלו בארץ יואיל להיפגש עם כל נשיאי בני ברית בארץ, הוא מיד הסכים. כשהוא סיפר לי שהוא מגיע לוועידת הנשיאים, שלחתי לו אימייל והתשובה הגיעה תוך 10 דקות, והנה אנחנו נפגשים כאן. A few words about our guest. דני מרישין הוא מנכ"ל בני ברית העולמי, כמנהל הבכיר של הארגון, הוא מנהל ומפקח על התוכניות, הפעילות וצוות של בני ברית ברחבי העולם. דן מרישין משמש גם כמנהל המרכז הבינלאומי לזכויות אדם ומדיניות ציבורית של בני ברית. בתפקיד זו משמש כדובר בני ברית, המפרש את המדיניות למגוון קהלים, לרבות הקונגרס האמריקאי, מנהיגי עולם, דיפלומטים גלובליים ותקשורת, עם האחריות על תיאום התוכניות ומדיניות של הארגון בנושאים דאגה לקהילה היהודית, וכמובן בנושא האנטישמיות. בארצות הברית ומחוץ לה נפגש דן מרישין עם עשרות ראשי מדינות, ראשי ממשלה, שרי חוץ, מנהיגי אופוזיציה, מנהיגים דתיים וחברי תקשורת משפיעים כדי לקדם זכויות אדם ולסייע בהגנה על זכויות הקהילות היהודיות ברחבי העולם וכן לקדם יחסים טובים יותר עם מדינת ישראל. דן מרישין בילה כמעט את כל חייו המקצועיים בעבודה למען ארגונים יהודיים, החל משנת 1973 כחבר קשרי קהילה עם מועצת הקהילות היהודיות של בוסטון. שנתיים לאחר מכן הוא מונה למנהל המשרד בניו אינגלנד של הפדרציה הציונית האמריקנית והבית הציוני ביוסטון. ב-1977 הוא הצטרף לליגה נגד השמצה של בני ברית כמנהל המחלקה לענייני המזרח התיכון שלה. מ-1979 עד 86 הוא שימש כעוזר למנהל הלאומי של ADL, נתן פרלמוטר ז"ל, וכמנהל החטיבה המנהיגות הלאומית שלה. לפני הצטרפות לבני ברית, דן מרישין שימש כמנהל התקשורת ודובר ראשי של מי? של שר החוץ לשעבר אלכסנדר הייג, וליווה אותו לכל מהלך הבחירות שלו לנשיאות בשנת 88-89, ולצערנו הוא לא נבחר, הוא אהב מאוד את ישראל אלכסנדר הייג, ודן גם עבד כקריין רדיו ופרשן חדשות. I am very proud to ask you, dear Dan, to say a few words to us. At the end of the speech, he will also answer some questions, and Dan, welcome. And if you want to sit, you can sit here. Okay, good.
Can you hear me? Yes? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Not accustomed to this. Thank you very much, Ilan. I included always General Haig in my CV because I was very proud to have worked as his dover, but especially proud that he was a good friend of the state of Israel. And he was a great mentor of mine and a great American and an accomplished general. And I always want to make sure that he's included. It's really great to be here. It's just terrific to see this room filled with people, filled with activity in Bnei B'rith Israel. I know the hard work that Mano and Ilan have put in energizing Bnei B'rith in Israel. We've seen it in the last couple of visits, particularly when we came in December, and it's just so gratifying to see. We have Micha Natan here as well, and we worked with Micha a long time in our visits. And I could see the beginning of a rebirth and regrowth here in Israel, and now you've really taken it to the next level.
Yes.
And it's mostly something that all of us in Bnei B'rith International are pleased to see. So I was here in December, and we were talking with Ilan about what could we do after October 7th. How could we partner? How could we work together? And so we created, as we normally do when there is a crisis here in Israel, we created an Israel Emergency Fund. Many organizations created funds, but not every organization had a partner, a direct partner in Israel, as we do with you. And so between Ilan and my colleagues in Washington and myself, we came up with some great ideas. You came up with some great ideas about what was needed here. So we had two needs. We had needs of the basic necessities for the soldiers, and we had needs of those who were displaced from the north and from the south. And with our fund, I think that we've accomplished a great deal, and we will be accomplishing more. And I had the great privilege, Alan was there, my wife was there, and some others, where we were packing boxes. I brought with me some military-grade backpacks for your medics in the Army. Really, to see this tremendous outpouring, not talking only about us, in this country, this tremendous outpouring of support for the soldiers, for the IDF in this country, and for the displaced in this country is really something very special. You know, we talk about, you know, Klal Yisrael, we talk about, and sometimes people think, well, that's, you know, is it really that we work together? Is it really that we feel like we're together? Because we're oftentimes divided, and we're oftentimes debating, which I suppose is a very Jewish thing to do. But in reality, with the tremendous challenge that was brought to this country by what happened on October 7th, I think it was just, it really is something to see. All of Israel coming together for the soldiers and for the displaced persons. I failed to, by the way, to introduce my wife. And really, you must meet her if you haven't met her already. So, Michal, would you stand? Now, she is an Ola herself. She came here brought here by her parents as a little girl from India. So if you like, we can give you the family history later, but it's Baghdadi on one side and it's Bukhari on another side. I'm really very, very proud of her. She's been a great partner. And frankly, what zchut I have had to have married an Israeli and to marry into that family. So I wanted to make sure that you met her. Let me talk about the great things that B'nai B'rith Israel does. Even before October 7th, we talked about that. But all the projects that you do. When we were here in December, Mano and Ilan had a PowerPoint presentation, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was page after page after page of activity and programs, and how, you know, what you represent is really the essence of what B'nai B'rith's mission is. What was the mission? We were founded in 1843. This is our 180th anniversary. By the way, B'nai B'rith Israel is not too far behind. So you were founded in 1888, I believe. So we have 180 years, but the original founders of B'nai B'rith, what was it that they were doing? How did they come together? What was it that brought the 11 or 12, you know, sometimes you get 11 or 12 or 14 or 13, whatever it was. They came together where? In New York City. They were German Jewish immigrants who came to New York, and they were different. There was a doctor, and I think there were some businessmen, and there were shopkeepers. They came together because there was a widow, a woman who lost her husband, had children, needed help, and the story goes that they raised $27, 1843. Now, $27 in 1843, the accountants, or those of you who do actuarial tables, you can probably, or budget projections, you can figure out. The $27 is probably a lot of money in 1843. But it wasn't the money. It wasn't the money that brought them together. It was the mission of helping an indigent, a poor widow. And that idea of volunteers helping in the community, making life better through a Jewish perspective is really what started our organization. And then it became B'nai B'rith in the United States, and B'nai B'rith in Europe, B'nai B'rith in Latin America, Canada, Australia, etc. So I thank you for all of the volunteer work that you do in all of these communities. It's really fantastic, and you are living out the real mission of this organization. A word about our cooperation beyond October 7th. The number of lodges that you have in this country, I think together with France, I think France and Israel are the largest groups of lodges in the B'nai B'rith world. And when we go to France, and I'll be in Paris in about 10 days, we'll be hosted by one of the leaders of our organization internationally, but in France, Philippe Meyer. And when I come here, I have the same feeling of this energy and this activity. So the partnership, which I know Mano and Ilan wanted very much to do, to grow what Micha and Danny Gratz did, to grow that partnership, especially at a time now that we're under so much pressure and under attack, is extremely important to us. We take it seriously, and we want to build on that relationship. Now let me say a few words, and one other thing about the tradition of B'nai B'rith Israel. I didn't want to leave this out. Among the early founders and leaders of this organization are some of the great names in Jewish history. So the tradition that you have, the legacy that they left for you, I think is something very impressive. It's a great story. And it's a story that my colleague Alan Schneider has been telling for the 30 plus years, I don't know, 35 plus years, that he's been with B'nai B'rith. He's not only, Alan is many things. He is a great professional leader in our field, in my field. He is one of the most, not only devoted professionals, but a devoted Zionist. He hardly sleeps. He does such important work. But he is very proud of the history of B'nai B'rith in this country. Just as a couple of examples, some of your members, the early members.
Chaim Nachman Bialik,
No,
Ben Yehuda,
no, Dizengoff, yeah.
Weizmann,
David Yellen. Come on, more. And Eliezer Ben Yehuda.
And it was his decision that all the lodge speak Hebrew, just Hebrew in the lodge, because Ben Yehuda.
Yeah, Ben Yehuda would be disappointed in me. that I have to give this, that I can't come here and address you in Hebrew. But the point is, you heard the names, and there are many more names. And we are very proud of that. What a great tradition you have here. It's a unique tradition, but we talk about that tradition because it says something about the quality of leadership, the quality of membership, and the quality of the contributions that B'nai B'rith Israel has made to the building of the state of Israel. Now, I want to talk about the current situation that we have here before us to give you some perspective from Washington. First of all, let me say, I have a cousin who is a hostage. Sagi Dekalchen from Nir Oz. Some of you may have seen the story. I think it was told here about his mother, Nomit, who was filled with shrapnel. They threw her into the wagon, pulled by a tractor from the kibbutz to take from Nir Oz to Gaza to the border. You all know it's maybe 2 kilometers. And at a certain point they were going, and the helicopter came over, an IDF helicopter, and they started firing at the terrorists. She fell out of the wagon, and she played dead, and she survived. Now her son, Sagi, was taken. He's 35 years old. He has 3 daughters. The youngest daughter was just born a few weeks ago while he was in captivity. So my personal connection to the state of Israel is now enhanced in a way by this hostage experience. And we talked this morning with about his grandson. And of course, we're hoping this week. I've heard the stories. Let's hope that we have good news. We have good news this week. But I have to tell you, on the morning of October 7th, with my big family here in Israel, I got up early. I had breakfast on Shabbat morning, Simchat Torah, and my heart sank as I began to hear the news. As all of you experienced, I can't tell you, I was not here, but I can tell you from Washington, this was a terrible experience for all of us. I would start by saying this. I'm one who believes that the IDF needs to complete its job. It has to complete its job. And I'll tell you something. There are a lot of people who are giving Israel advice. You know, I say in Yiddish, etzes gevers. A lot of people giving advice. Where are they giving you the advice from? They're giving you the advice from the UK, from France, from here, from there, from Belgium, from Brazil, and even from Washington, of what to do. And look, I'll tell you something. As an American, you know, we're fortunate. You know who our neighbors are? You know, Canada on the north and Mexico on the south. Hardly any threats to the United States. Generally speaking, they're friendly. And 2 oceans on the other side. In World War II, the United States sent its troops thousands of miles away to the European theater and to Asia to save the world for democracy and to defeat our enemies so they would not come into the United States. Technology was different, of course, but it was a bloody war. The war started when? September 1st, 1939. For America, it began on December 7th, 1941. So from December 7th, 1941 until June and August, depending on where, the European theater, the war against Japan, for us it was 4 years. You've been fighting 4 months against an enemy that is, in the case of Nir Oz, 2 kilometers away. So for these presidents and prime ministers and foreign ministers to offer advice about how you should conduct, somebody wrote the other day, David Weinberg wrote the other day, you know, treating Israelis essentially like children in a way. You don't know how to defend yourself, you don't know what to do. I remember there were articles in the paper, in the newspaper, should you use 1,000-pound bombs, 500-pound bombs, written by people who never served 1 day in the army. But this is what they do. Now, we've seen something else. We've seen, because of what's happening, we've seen the politicization of anti-Semitism. What do I mean? What do I mean? The president of Brazil, which is one of the largest countries in the world, the president of Brazil says that what Israel is doing in Gaza is what Hitler did to the Jews. Or, South Africa goes to the International Court of Justice. You know, the word genocide was coined, was introduced by Raphael Lemkin. Lemkin was a great human rights activist. And he was trying to come up with a word to describe what had just happened to the Jews between 1939 and 1945, 1933 and 1945. So the term genocide originally applied to us. Now what they're doing, what South Africa is doing by taking and going to the International Court of Justice and charging Israel with genocide against the Palestinians, is to take the victim. You were the victim. We were the victims in 1933 when Hitler came to power. And you were the victims on October 7th. And what they're doing by going to the International Court is turning it on its head. And the victim has become the victimizer. You know, I have a theory about why Europeans do this. A lot of Europeans like to do this. And my theory is, and I'm not a psychologist and I'm not a psychiatrist, but my theory is that, you know, since 1945, we have reminded and we will continue to remind and we will always remind about the Shoah and about how they, Europeans primarily, either stood by or apathetic and worse, or collaborate. So this is what we do, and we have to remind. This is our job. Those of us who, we don't remember it, most of us don't remember it, but those of us who want to keep that terrible chapter, to teach about what happened to us alive, this is something that we need to do. And my feeling is that the Europeans, in order to have that guilt raised from their shoulders, they kind of like the idea, and it may be subliminal, I don't know, or maybe intentional, but they like the idea that now, that we say in English, the playing field is leveled. So you were a victim. Jews, you were a victim. But now you're victimizing Palestinians. Therefore, okay, that's, you know, this is, now we're even. And we can't allow that to happen. How many prime ministers said, for example, Prime Minister of Ireland, early on, after October 7th, everybody in that first 2 weeks, they were saying Israel has a right to defend itself, right? Everybody said Israel has a right to defend itself. But after 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, it started to change. And so the Prime Minister of Ireland said, well, this doesn't look like self-defense to me. It looks like revenge. Revenge. Listen, the reason countries have armies, it's a very simple thing, but we don't think about it. You raise an army to defend your people. And you raise an army, as we said, not only to defend your people, but to be stronger than your enemy. The idea is to defeat your, well, otherwise why would we be spending billions in the United States, trillions of dollars on military in order to be the strongest and to be able to defeat the enemy? And that's what's happening here. So I hope that the IDF finishes the job, but I don't like when somebody says this is revenge, or I don't like when somebody says this is genocide. And I don't like it when somebody says Israel's response is disproportionate. And I don't like it when someone says, as they said, I think it was the Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium said, the inhumane treatment. I don't have to go into all the details, you know about it, but it's something that bothers me, because what's happened here is that the discussion of this war has washed over into anti-Semitism. Now, let me just talk about anti-Semitism. B'nai B'rith, as you know, was one of the first 2 or 3 organizations in the Jewish world to be involved in UN activity. And B'nai B'rith was present in San Francisco in 1945 when the UN was founded. And in 1947, B'nai B'rith received its first credentials as an NGO, a non-governmental organization at the UN. And then in 1960, we opened the first office, full-time office, on United Nations affairs in the Jewish community. And then we were accredited at UNESCO in Paris and at the Human Rights Council in Geneva, and in all the UN agencies that would relate to the work that we do. So we go back with the UN a long time. But the UN has never given Israel a fair break. And one of the things that we are constantly doing is calling out all of the bias, all of the discrimination against the state of Israel that occurs in all of the UN agencies. In another week or two, I'll be in Paris. We'll be meeting with the head of UNESCO. I'll be going to Geneva with our president, Seth Ricklin, and a delegation. And we'll be meeting with a number of ambassadors and officials of the UN Human Rights Council. The UN Human Rights Council is probably the worst of the UN agencies. The Human Rights Council of the UN is one that looks the other way at the human rights abuses of countries that you know are human rights abusers, and instead has decided to focus largely on Israel. And that's one of the most important activities of our organization in our effort to fight back at what I call the politicization of, the politicization of anti-Semitism. Now, I just want to say one other word about the situation here, and then I'll talk about some of the other things that we do. One of the most important things that we can do is to continue to point a finger at Iran. Iran is at the basis, Iran is behind all of the chaos and the unrest in this region, from the Red Sea and the Houthis all the way through, up and down, north and south, east and west. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iraqi proxies, the Syrian proxies, Houthis that I mentioned. Not to mention Iran's own activity, its own activity in trying to create a nuclear weapon, and it's pretty close to creating the nuclear weapon. And there seems to be an attitude in the West over a number of years, Europe, United States, seems to be an attitude of, well, maybe we can compromise with the Iranians. We can make a deal with the Iranians. We can sit at the table with the Iranians. And every time we have tried to do that, the Iranians have done what? Stuck a finger in our eye. Every single time. Every single time. So, you know, there's an attempt here to, in some places, not to want to face up to the reality of the threats that Iran poses. By the way, not only poses to you, to us, it poses to its own people. It poses to its own people. Whatever happened to those demonstrations for the women? The woman who didn't want to wear the hijab, what happened to those demonstrations? She was killed. But what happened to the demonstrations? It just stopped, and it just stopped. And that needs to end. And I would say one other thing, as it relates to October 7th. The violence against women that occurred in those 10, 11, 12 hours essentially was met with silence. It was met with silence. In the United States, we have a number of big women's organizations. And there wasn't a statement from any of them. Not a statement. And that is something that is totally unacceptable. And we have to change that. Coming up soon at the UN in New York, in a couple of weeks, will be meetings, it runs for almost 2 weeks, of the Commission on the Status of Women. And I know there will be a couple of side meetings. I'm hoping that B'nai B'rith can participate. Side meetings which will put a spotlight on what transpired on October 7th. And I'll tell you something. I thought that these reports coming from the hostages themselves, of what they saw. I heard one of the hostages just a few days ago. I don't know, Alan, were you in the room that day? Oh, you weren't there. One of the hostages who reported on what she saw was just absolutely, I mean, to me it was shocking. It was shocking. And the silence of these organizations, the silence of the women's organizations, the silence of the human rights organizations is a disgrace, and we have to call that out, and we will continue to call it out. Now, one of the things, of course, that we try to do every day is to encourage a close relationship between the United States and the State of Israel. That's ongoing. We're meeting with members of Congress. We meet with members of the administration to encourage that close relationship. You need it, we need it as Americans. And that's something that you should know that B'nai B'rith puts a very high priority on. We're also deeply concerned about the rise of anti-Semitism as a result of October 7th, but even before that. Before October 7th, we were facing the greatest increase in anti-Semitic incidents in the United States in decades. And of course, you know, in Europe it's the same way, and in other places it's the same way. Frankly, the Jews in America for years fought to achieve that acceptance, that respect. You know, there were days when Jewish students couldn't get into certain universities, Jews couldn't get certain jobs, Jews couldn't buy homes and buy businesses in certain neighborhoods, and we worked and worked and worked so hard to bring us to a point where we were treated like everybody else. And now, this torrent, this tsunami of anti-Semitism that has been unleashed, which frankly, much of it, if you think about it, much of it is pro-Hamas. People have forgotten about October 7th, and they're more interested in everything that happened after October 7th. And this is a major challenge to all of us, and one that we are making every effort to meet. Now let me just talk about a couple of other things that we do, Elon, then we'll turn it over to questions. B'nai B'rith is not only working in the public diplomacy sphere. In the United States, we're the largest sponsor of affordable housing, apartments, for low-income senior citizens. I know you have a house here in Haifa, which I've been to. In the United States, we have 5,000 apartments, probably 6,000 residents, maybe 6,500.
Visit us 10 years from now, and you can see something like
okay. I'll come back. It's extremely important. Look, you know, as Jews, right, what is the fifth commandment? The fifth commandment is honor thy father and thy mother, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing here. We venerate our elders, and their dignity is important to us, and that's why we have this housing program. It's quite successful, and really I'm very proud of it. Another thing that we do, and you've heard about it, this is something that has been going on since the 1860s, is that we try to help the victims of natural disasters. Earthquakes, and tornadoes, and tsunamis, whether it's in the United States and outside. We're not, as we say in English, we're not first responders, but we do raise money. Alan Schneider has done some fantastic work in a number of countries, around the globe, actually, in helping the victims, not only Jewish victims, but mostly non-Jewish victims, of all of these natural disasters. And this is something that B'nai B'rith started in the 1860s. There were floods in Pennsylvania at that time, and we raised some money for the victims. Then there was an outbreak of yellow fever in the 1870s, and the victims of yellow fever in New Orleans and in Memphis, Tennessee. It's very interesting. I once went to the American Jewish Archives, and they had a book from Memphis, Tennessee, from 1872, I think it was. There was an outbreak of yellow fever. I don't know what they call yellow fever. And in this notebook from 1872, a B'nai B'rith notebook, and it said the number of blankets that the B'nai B'rith provided, the number of tents that B'nai B'rith provided. Well, it makes you proud. It makes you feel proud. And we still carry on that important tradition. So that's our general program. Working in public diplomacy at the United Nations, advocating for the state of Israel, fighting anti-Semitism, providing dignity to our senior citizens in their old age, to give them a dignified life for their golden years, and helping the victims of natural disasters. But let me go back to you. Right now, we're living through a historic moment in Jewish history. This is October 7th, and all that has followed is a historic moment. When they write the history, when there are history written by historians 100 years from now, 200 years from now, what happened on October 7th and the response to it will be written about. So much depends on what follows here, not only for the state of Israel, for the Middle East, and for the rest of the world. So we're living through it, and I think that we are privileged, frankly, not privileged necessarily to have these terrible attacks, these massacres, but privileged to be able as an organization to, when crisis strikes, when an emergency strikes, to be able to say, we are doing something to help our fellow brothers and sisters, whether they're in B'nai B'rith or they're outside B'nai B'rith. I'll just tell you finally, there isn't a family in this room, I'm sure, that isn't connected in some way to the idea of somebody's got a son, a grandson, a nephew, a friend, a neighbor. That's the way this country is. The other night, after we had visited near Oz, and we visited the Eshkol Regional Council, it was a very intense day. You can imagine. It was an intense day. And on the schedule in the evening, it said, barbecue with soldiers. Barbecue with soldiers. And these were soldiers who had come out of Gaza. They were there for a couple of hours. They were going to have a barbecue. There was dancing. There was some music. And we had an opportunity to talk and to sit with these young men and women who are really the flower of the Jewish people. They're the flower of the Jewish people. These kids, call them kids. You know, if they're in the United States, they'd be taking a gap year, they'd be going to work, they'd be traveling, they'd be doing this, they'd be doing that. They wouldn't be carrying around 40 or 50 or 60 pounds on their back and dodging bullets, but they're doing it. And I always, since we came in December, and I said it to these young people this time, I told them, you're not only fighting for the state of Israel, you're not only fighting for Israelis, you're not only fighting for your families, you are fighting for us, you are fighting for the Jewish people. You are fighting, this is a battle on behalf of the Jewish people because of this historic moment. And I'm proud to be a Zionist. I'm proud to have a connection to this land through my family. And I'm proud to have a connection to this land through this organization, through B'nai B'rith Israel, because of the important work that you do. So, thank you to all of you.
אנחנו נעבור לשאלות. אני רק מבקש, כל מי ששואל יציג את השם שלו וגם את הלשכה שהוא מגיע. והיות ואני פה מנחה את הערב, אני אנצל את ההזדמנות ואני אשאל את השאלה הראשונה. So the first question I can ask you.
Yes.
How do you see dear Dan, going forward the development of Bnei Brit in the world following the rise of antisemitism, and especially after October 7? איך הוא רואה את ההתפתחות של בני ברית מעתה והלאה, בעיקר סביב נושא התגברות האנטישמיות ובעקבות אוקטובר 7?
Look, the difference between 1939 and 2024, 2023, the difference is exactly, there was no state of Israel in 1939, and there was no IDF in 1939, but that's the broader picture. The narrower picture, which is to your question, is that, listen, we don't have to take this anymore. You know, we've been on the receiving end of anti-Semitism before. Since for thousands of years we've received. And you have to believe that our position is in the right. What we are, the way to answer this is to answer with the facts. The way to answer it is to educate. It doesn't have to be education in a university. It can be a neighbor. It can be a fellow worker. It can be in the street. We have to be knowledgeable enough about our own past, about our own history, but also to tell the truth of what's happening now. There's no mystery about what's happening now. The Jewish state was attacked. The Jewish state was attacked by a band of thugs, by a band of terrorists. That's what they did. And we as a people have a right to respond. And don't rewrite the story. And don't tell me it's genocide against Palestinians. I want them to know exactly what happened and why we are acting as we do. And I'll tell you, I don't know. I don't know. In the United States, for example, we're trying to find who's behind this. It just doesn't happen. I'll give you an example. In 1 week, there was a big pro-Palestinian demonstration in Washington. They say 150,000 people. I don't know how many people. 2 days later, or 3 days later, there was a demonstration outside Lockheed Martin. If you know Lockheed Martin, it's an aircraft company that has its headquarters just outside Washington, in Virginia. And a few days after that, there was a demonstration, pro-Palestinian demonstration, outside the private house of President Biden in Wilmington, Delaware. Now, how is it that these young people know where to go, when to go, how to go? Who's providing the transportation? Who's providing the flags? Who's providing the posters? Who's providing the, from the river to the sea, from the river to the sea? Who's doing it? And this is not just happening spontaneously. There is a group of organizations, is a group of people funding this activity. It's not all about money, so it's more sinister than that. And we, Bnei Brit, other organizations, law enforcement organizations in the United States, the FBI and others, they have to reveal, and Congress has to ask, where is it coming from? Where is the organization? This is organized anti-Semitism. And we are doing everything we can to help. We don't have all the information, but at least to publicize it. In Europe, for example, we have an excellent office in Brussels. We have an EU office, a European Union office in Brussels. And our director there, Alina Brickman, is working with the European Parliament and with the European Council of Ministers, the Commission. They're working on the same kinds of projects. Where is the money coming from? Now, we also have anti-Semitism. We have it from the left and we have it from the right. We have neo-Nazi marches in Europe. We have, at this particular moment, we have a lot of this. And we're also living in a time of social media. So we have to be good at social media. We have to be at the top of our game with Twitter, now they call it X, with Instagram, even with TikTok. TikTok speaks to a particular demographic. We have to be at the top of our game on that. It's not going to be easy. Look what happened. You know the singer Matisyahu? Some of you? Yeah. So two of his concerts, he couldn't have two of his concerts. Why? Because the crew that puts together the microphones and the stage and so forth, they decided, he's a Zionist, they don't want to work for him. There's a lot of that going on, and there will be more of that going on. But we have to find out, how does that happen? People who cannot find Gaza on a map. You know, you've heard all of the jokes, but the truth is, there was one. Noah Tishby did an interesting interview. It went viral. You may have seen it. She asked some kid at a demonstration. The kid is holding some kind of poster. So she said to the kid, "Do you know what this means?" She says, "No, my friend asked me to hold it."
No, they asked him which river and which
river is he? They don't. Yeah, somebody said, yeah, there was one demonstration in the United States where somebody said she thinks it was Lake Michigan. Look, this is she said this. So this is what we have to do, and we are up to the job, and I know that you are up to the job as well.
אוקיי, תשאל שאלות. להרים יד מישהו רגע, בקטע הזמנת מראש, תציג את עצמך.
My name is David Lian, and I'm the chairman of the board of the retirement house in Haifa. 65 years ago, the neighbor group decided to build the house.
Here, do you want to use this? Here, use this.
This one. I have to take it. It's all right. Here you go.
Oh, you hear me?
התראות להוריד.
65 years ago, members of Haifa group decided to build a retirement house for their parents. Since then, the retirement house has been operating successfully. Neighboring Israel intend to extend the building and enlarge it for a new modern nursing home or retirement house. We have the ability to build 15 floors, and it was something very nice. I have two questions. One, you have already answered for this is that you have a retirement house in the States, but all over the world, maybe there are some more. We want to be in connection with them and to learn from them something new about retirement house and everything. And now the second question. I'm sure that Brית manage finance it. So can Brית, the global Brית, can be the one who will invest in the building the house and then also make money after the building will be finished.
Okay. All right. Your first question is the easiest one to answer.
The second.
No, so we have the United States and Canada has properties. Australia also I visited. Not in Canada, but I have visited the place in Australia. So those are and Israel. Those are the three places outside the United States that we have senior housing. As far as investments, I can't tell you, on one foot, the answer to that question. Our president, Seth Ricklin, was just here in Israel. Unfortunately, he had to go back. But I will take your question back to him and to our board, to the Financial Management Committee, and of course we need a lot more information. But your question's a good one, and it's an investment not only in seniors, it's an investment in the state of Israel. That's clear. So I'll give you my coordinates, and we can follow up afterwards.
Thank you very much.
בתיה בבקשה.
Hi, so thank you so much for your information. It was so interesting.
תציגי את עצמך.
Oh, I said, my name is Batya Kaliski. I'm the president of Lahat.
שלמה להט.
Shlomo Lahat, the late wonderful mayor of Tel Aviv, who created the city that never stops, never sleeps. We don't sleep. So my question is this. So I lived for 25 years in the States and mainly in San Francisco. I was teaching at the University of San Francisco. I was very much involved with the Jewish community, with the temples and the synagogues and the JCC. And I came across some of the Jewish organizations, the Vitzo, the Hadassah, the AIPAC, J Street, I was not involved with J Street, but it was there. I never heard, honestly, of Bnei Brit. And my question is, why you are not out there with the young generation, with the people at the temples, at the synagogues, at the Jewish community centers, to bring them? If I knew, I would be very much involved. I would maybe create something at the university. So,
well, I think there are some reasons for that. I'll give you one what I think is a good reason. Look, for years, B'nai B'rith had under its wings the Hillel organization, which was on hundreds of college campuses,
Yes.
university campuses, and under that was the B'nai B'rith youth organization, BBYO. So when it came to youth, B'nai B'rith was covered. We had youngsters, we had university-age students, and then we had B'nai B'rith. Now, what happened in the 1990s and then into 2000, 2001, 2002, what happened is both organizations, Hillel and BBYO, became successful. I won't say they were victims of their own success, but in a way, they became successful to the point where we could not fund the demands for those budgets. So what happened is they were, to use the business term, they were spun off. Hillel became a separate organization by itself, fine organization. BBYO is doing very well, and they are on their own. And we were left, in that sense, without our youth wings. And frankly, we've tried to fill that gap. Right now in the United States, we have a very good relationship with a fraternity, fraternities and sororities, with the Alpha Epsilon Pi fraternity, which is the strongest of the Jewish fraternities, and it's on dozens and dozens of campuses. And we do some programming with them. In fact, I was just asked to be a member of the task force of Alpha Epsilon Pi, which is studying anti-Semitism on campus. You know about our universities. We have a terrible problem with anti-Semitism universities. So your point's well taken. You didn't see B'nai B'rith's name, but you probably saw Hillel's name, or you may have all the time. So that's kind of the reason. It's look, it's something that to build up a brand, it takes a while. But it sounds to me as though you were pretty active in any case in San Francisco. Okay. Next question, anybody?
עוד שאלות? טוב, תראו מה אנחנו נעשה עכשיו. אלישע בבקשה.
Use this. Here we go.
Last question.
היה מיזון נג'אר, היה פרזידנט of Elivizel Lodge, and you speak about...
Move your microphone up. No. Okay, use it like this. Use it like this.
תחזיקי את זה ככה, יד שלך.
Good.
You speak about the relation between my lodge and the Spanish lodge. Of course, we have a very, very good relation, very warm, and we make many action together. And I know, of course, his president, Philippe Meyer, very nice. Now, I want to speak about Dan Marishin. Dan Marishin is very, very, very nice man, very warm, very generous, and we know, my husband and me, since 20 or 25 years, because I am in Brit since 30 years. And I never forget that when my husband was ill, he called me from Washington to have a news for my husband. One time, do you remember, you called me to have the name of my the mother of my husband. I said, why? You said, I go to synagogue every Shabbat, and I want to pray for him. And just one, now my husband is dead, and I never forget also when with Irene Lopez, you remember, we organized a very big UNESCO event for Yiddish. And Dan Marishin give us 20,000 yes, because to help us.
Thank you very much. Good.
Wait. I have to say something about Liaison. Because her husband, her late husband, was a real leader in the French Jewish community. Very well liked, highly respected. We always looked forward to meeting him. And in this case, his legacy lives on with Liaison and the work that she's doing. So it was such a great surprise to see you here today. Really.
Please sit, Dan, please sit. הערה לסדר. מה שנעשה עכשיו, לפני שאני אבקש ממנו לסכם, אני מבקש שנעשה צילום איך שאתם יושבים. אחרי שמנו מסיים את הברכה שלו, של הסיכום, נצא החוצה ונעשה צילום נוסף בחוץ, בסדר? אז בבקשה, דקה אחת, ואחרי זה מנו יצא. בוא נעשה, יאללה. אוקיי רבותיי. בנים, אחד, שתיים, יאללה.
יש לי גם בדיחות, תשמע. רגע, אולי בסוף, שיקומו.
האחרונים שיקומו.
3 שורות. 3 שורות.
3 שורות.
איזה שפה הם מדברים בעברית? כן. 3 שורות.
זה צרפתי.
יופי.
יופי, יאללה, מה? רבותיי, לא גמרנו.
אני יכול לבקש, יש לי בקשה מכל האלה שעומדים, תתיישבו, יש מקום בישיבה. בסדר, אז תעברו לפני שאנחנו הולכים לעשות את הצילום המשותף. אני חושב שכולם מתרגשים מהצילום המשותף. חברים, יש פה רחש, אי אפשר ככה לדבר. אני מסכם באנגלית, כדי שדן מרישין יבין מה שאני מדבר, בסדר? On behalf of Bnei Brit Israel Executive Committee and the Lodge Presidents, I want to thank Mr. Dan Marishin, Bnei Brit International CEO, for attending this special meeting and talking with us. Thanks also to Mr. Alan Schneider. We are proud to be part of a large international Jewish organization. We are aware that the main missions of Bnei Brit International are combating anti-Semitism, fighting for human rights, and supporting the state of Israel. This meeting gives us a special opportunity to hear more detailed information about the Bnei Brit International activities directly from the top management of this organization. We have prepared a new strategic plan for Bnei Brit Israel for the next 5 years. One of our main goals is expanding the cooperation between and the ties between us and the Bnei Brit worldwide. This includes cooperation of our Grand Lodge with Bnei Brit International and the ties between our Israeli lodges with Bnei Brit lodges around the world. We plan to host Bnei Brit delegations from abroad, here in Israel, and also visiting Bnei Brit organizations around the world. Last month, we upgraded our website. You can see it on the screen there. And made an English version of the site. In English, you see. This website is connected to Bnei Brit International site at the first time. So that Bnei Brit members around the world can visit and get information about us. Since October the 7th, we experienced very tough times. However, the Iron Swords War gave us special opportunity to work closely with our Bnei Brit brothers and sisters around the world. I want to thank so much Bnei Brit International, especially thank Mr. Dan Marishin for the generous donations sent to us. These donations enabled us to send the needed equipment and the food to our soldiers in the front, and to help the displaced residents from Gaza Strip envelope and the northern part of Israel. I would like to thank also Ilan Shchori, our President Advisor for International Relations, and Moran Amgadi is out there, our Secretary, for organizing this special meeting. Thank you all for your listening.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Please, כולם, צאו החוצה לבימה קטנה, צילום משותף, הפסקה של 20 דקות, ונתכנס למועצה בראשות שיבח. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.